All right, I'll call the order of the May 9th Public Works meeting. Can I get a roll call, please?
Recording in progress.
Sure. Alderman Weggie?
Here.
Alderwoman Tice? Here. Alderman Gould?
Here.
Alderman Erger is absent.
Great. Moving on to the agenda approval. Any issues? If not, we'll approve by acclamation. Citizen comment? Anyone online or in the room?
No.
Okay. Reports to the committee chair. I have nothing. Alderwoman Tice?
No report?
Alderman Gould? Okay, great. We'll move into department reports, Public Works.
So, have a few miscellaneous reports here, or projects rather, to report on. So the Russell Avenue STP, as most of you are aware, Missouri American's still doing work there. They ran into some rock, so it's taken them longer to get through it than they expected. They're trying to hit a completion date of around May 17th. And that's important because Union Pacific Railroad plans on closing northbound and southbound Brentwood Boulevard, starting on the 18th of May through the 20th of May. So they've already given us their traffic plan, showing like the detour and stuff of that nature. So it's one of those things that's unavoidable for the progress to get the new track crossing and get the signal bases and things like that. This has to occur. So that's pretty much it on that. 2818 Breckenridge Industrial, I just put it on there, or kept it on there since that's the former Bowser House we need to do demolition on. We're still waiting on the FEMA approval. I know there's some things inside the building we were taking inventory of. We thought maybe we could sell. That way keeps your demolition costs lower. Same thing like some of the scrap metal that was outside from Keeley. The street sweeper, we did add the broom attachment. We did some spot cleaning of gumballs, our favorite thing. Eulalie, Rosalie, also along Pine, there was some gravel. We'd got a call from dispatch. I guess a truck went through there and dropped a bunch of rock when it hit the speed cushions. So we cleaned that up. And then the purchase for the large sweeper, that remains on hold for the FEMA approval.
Could I ask a street sweeper question?
Yeah.
So you had mentioned borrowing the Maplewood truck, like
We did,
about
yeah,
now.
twice, yeah.
Right, but you said in April, we'd maybe borrow it in another month. Like, is that still a plan, or?
I haven't contacted them, but I can.
I mean, is that something we could keep up on? I don't know if it's monthly
Yeah,
or
I was
every
hoping
6
we'd have the
weeks,
approval
or-
by now, but
Okay.
since that's in limbo, I mean, we can ask them. Worst they can say is no.
Okay.
But, oh, well, true. It feels like limbo.
Yeah, that's
Or
right.
purgatory or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, that might be,
One of those
it might
circles.
be worth it. It just looks a mess, and we've had these
Right.
rainstorms that keeps pushing the gumballs
That's why we
more
wanted to
into.
do the spot cleaning.
Yeah.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, we'll ask them because I don't feel that they would say no, so we'll
Okay.
just ask them. And
Great.
then as soon as we find out, then we'll run it through communications. That way people know when to expect it.
Perfect. And if we can avoid I know it's hard because we're borrowing it, but if we could avoid the trash days in the
Right.
different neighborhoods, that's helpful too. So I know like last time we couldn't avoid it, but,
Right, and then what was nice was because we did it and then did it a second time, then there wasn't as much the second time. So if we do it again relatively close to the last time, I would expect it's really just, again, sweet gumballs, but it is the storm debris, it's leaves and things that washed out.
right, great. Thank you.
Yep. And then this MSD OMCI tax, we had another virtual meeting. So basically, the folks that are in the Deer Creek watershed, so it'd be us, Maplewood, Ladue, Webster Grove, so on and so forth. Enough of those cities have to remain in or say that they want to keep the OMCI turned on. Otherwise, the OMCI would stop at the end of this year, and then it would strictly be Proposition S money starting in 2025. So even if there's enough that say yes, it still has to go to the MSD Board of Directors, and then they have to approve it. Most of the cities don't want to keep the full amount turned on. They were thinking maybe half. So for us, we'd get half that plus the Prop S, so we'd basically be a little bit better off than where we are now, or about the same. If it's strictly Prop S, then our monies go down, and then we don't have the same level of funding with just the OMCI.
Hey, Dan, when is that yes or no coming?
They're
Right,
supposed
'cause
to send
we
us a
answered
date.
yes, we would like to talk more.
We're supposed to meet, like, each city sends its representative, but then the representative can only report what the other representatives are saying, and then bring it back to committee and board. Since you're the decision makers, we're just the messengers. So basically, again, you would need to have, they're thinking like 70%. I don't know how many cities are in Deer Creek, but if it's 70% and they only hit like 40 or 50, then it's gonna just die for the fact that there's not enough popular vote.
But is that their plan, that there will be an actual yes or no?
Yes, before the end of May is what they said.
Not
so-
accepting yes, we want to talk more as a yes.
I think that pretty soon, possibly at the next board meeting, we need a firm direction on how to vote.
Yeah, and I can send the link, put that in the weekly report. That's from the virtual meeting, because they did have like some hand, so it lists like who's in the Deer Creek watershed. I just talking to some other cities that are in Deer Creek, some say yes, some say no. So,
Really depends on the level of storm, debris issues that they have. I think that's one of the determining factors, and we know what our issues have been here. So maybe that's one factor.
We have a sense even like of the OMCI municipalities, how many said, yes, I want to sit down and talk about it more, or did anybody reply to the survey and say no?
2 said hard no's because they actually receive more monies through Prop S than OMCI.
Okay.
So for them, they're gaining, so it's like, well, why would you want to keep it on?
Right.
They're like, we'll just do away with it. They didn't specifically say who they were. People had asked and they said, well, we don't want to say who they are. We
Yeah,
want to get everybody.
No, I mean, but we know that at least. Okay.
So is there sense from them, what are we gonna vote on a week in 10 days? Because there's this, keep it on a little,
Right.
keep it, like, what does that mean? And we need to have something to vote on, whether it's keep
Right.
it totally on, keep it on halfway, and then if the decision's 70%, like, do you have enough sense of what?
MSD believed it would be half, that
Half,
most
okay.
cities would agree to keeping half on if you were going to keep it on at all.
Okay,
Like, don't do 100%. Because they even had like some numbers, like if you had a $400,000 house, it would have, I think it was like $25, don't quote me, but it was something like that on your property taxes. So it's like if you keep it on, you're going to be taxed via Prop S if you're commercial property owners or whatever. If it's residential, it's like it's coming from a different pot, but then if you're doing OMCI, you're kind of being double taxed for stormwater. But with some cities having a lot of stormwater issues, it's like it's not a terrible idea because maybe you can tackle it sooner rather than later. And it would be one of those things they have to determine too, when would be the sunset? Would the OMCI be for another 5-year period, or is it just for 2, or?
but you'll have a sense, will you have another meeting between now and?
I could
appoint-
just call MSD and just ask them, it's like, well, what are we gonna be voting on?
Perfect,
You know,
that's good.
That way we at least have some talking points, and, if it's A, how many agree to A? If it's B, what's B?
Right.
That way, when we go to the meeting, we'll be able to say, this is what our board feels they want to do.
Thank you.
Okay. Over on 6 Yorkshire Lane Court, Castle did actually give me a design proposal. So it's in the magnitude of $38,000. It includes like $5,000 in reimbursables, which that's just a guess for now. The actual proposal is like $33,000 without the reimbursables. So what that means is they could actually do a design for like an ADA compliant switchback wall, but then you're still going to have construction on top of that, roughly $40,000. So it's not in the 24 budget, but we can put it in the 25 capital if that's the board's desire to consider it. So that's that information for that one. And then lastly, the additional parking lot update. I know Castle's been out there. These are the lots north and south of Manchester, like just to the east side of Dorothy. I know the one on the north side I drove by just a few minutes ago, like all the geofabric's down, most of the rock's down. I see the roller sitting there, so there's just a little area to roll. On the other side, I can see they've already started unrolling the fabric with the intent to put it, the whole limits, and then start doing rock on that side. I know it's close to completion. And then I know that Parks, as it's mentioned in the report, they misted it with water. They're going to do it again so that it'll keep the dust down and help them compact the rock. So, yeah.
And is that something that Parks intends to do throughout the summer as we get into the drier months? Are we going to just continue to do that while it's a temporary lot?
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to kind of
Sorry to make you walk up there.
You're gonna be up in,
I'm up next thing.
yeah.
We'll look at it on a regular schedule, kind of like what we do with mowing, everything else. I think we'll have to kind of see how it goes as far as the frequency of it. I'd like to say we could do it weekly, but we might need more than weekly. So I think it'll be depending on also rain, all that other stuff. So we'll be on top of it.
Okay, and then the second question that I have regarding the lot specifically on the north side of Manchester is making sure when they do put in the, I guess, little concrete humps for the stalls, I guess the parking stalls, are they also going to be putting in like Jersey barriers or something like that to prevent people from coming in off of Manchester onto the property that's just to the east of there? I want to make sure that we don't get traffic coming in from that
Yeah,
direction.
there's a couple of things we're looking at. There, we have like the channel lock barricades that we've used from time to time. Dan's looked at like a water-filled.
Oh,
type of-
water-filled Jersey barrier.
Yeah, like a water-filled Jersey barrier that would be,
I just think we should proactively be
Yep.
putting those mitigating measures out before we
that.
have problems.
we'll be doing that outside too to make sure people don't come off of,
Yeah, into the
and then cut in, make sure they have to go around on,
bottom part. Yep,
yeah.
okay, thank you.
Hey, Dan, one quick question on 6 Yorkshire Lane. Do you need a decision from the board here or anything?
Yes.
If we're doing design, but I mean, the budget parts.
Well, it really depends, since we don't have money in the '24 budget. Are you all comfortable with deferring this to '25, and then we can take a look at it during that budget process? Or do you want to give us direction and say, we would like to see it in the '25 budget?
And it's really two components. It's the design,
Design and
33,000,
construction.
and then construction estimated at 40.
That's 33, and then he said, what is the 5,000 for?
5,000 is reimbursable, so they want to give themselves an allowance, basically. They may not even hit that, it may be $2,000, but basically it's a 33 plus the 5 for a not to exceed of 38.
I'll comment first and then I'll make a motion. So I would love to see this move forward. It's making our city walkable is really important. I think the top thing that came out of the Parks Master Plan was walkability of our city. So I would love to see this. I'm also sensitive of the budget and other constraints. So do we have a sense? We don't have any sense of the cost of doing this.
Not really. I looked at it. I know there's quite a bit of elevation change, and they were talking about something more permanent, which would be like concrete. You know, you'd actually dig forms, rebar, concrete, but then that's probably at least a 40, 50-year useful life. So that's better than if you just drove in steel pile, which then would probably corrode, and then somebody's going to be out there in, maybe 30. But they thought if they did the ramps as part of the wall system, that it would also look aesthetically nice. It would look purposeful, hold the hillside, and give you a ramp.
And
They were thinking maybe 6 figures in
Yeah,
total.
that's
I was
what
like,
I would
"Man, that's
figure,
pretty
yeah.
steep."
yeah, and there's no. I'll ask. There's no way to get this in this year. The studying in this year. There's nothing else that's.
You just found some savings just here recently
we
for
have,
20,000?
Yeah, there's roughly 20,000.
So
as a
he would
budget
need to
line.
look for 10 more.
Yeah, maybe we just do it later in the year if more becomes available. If you already started with 20, maybe you can get to, or by the time they bill it, maybe they'll do progress payments, like always. So you're not taking the full $38,000 hit in 1 month. It's
Unless
spread
Eric
out.
has some savings he wants to contribute.
I'm doing spending money this year.
Right.
Can we come back once we've found a way to pay for it this year? Or do you want to give us direction and say, if you find a way to pay for it, then you can bring it forward to the Board of Aldermen?
Yeah, I'll do that. So I'll make a motion that ask staff to look for savings within the current budget to fund the path at 6 Yorkshire Lane Court and to forward it on to the Board of Aldermen as savings are found.
And that's
Just for the design, for up to 38,000 for the design portion.
I'll second that.
Yeah, I think that's the right thing, because we'd want a better estimate for next year's budget for build anyway. Okay, any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, thanks, Dan.
Oh, that's you.
I brought it up, then I went sat back down. I know there's a question about FEMA, and so I did want to give a quick update. We've been talking to SEMA and FEMA, and what we found out is that if you go back and look at the documents that establish FEMA, it's actually based on Dante's Inferno, and we're about circle 8 right now. So we're getting close.
Where a pope is chewing on your head, I think, or something.
Exactly. Seriously though, SEMA did talk to FEMA, and FEMA said they're reviewing the last letter for their approval, and they hope to get it to us soon. Now, again, soon for FEMA, according to anyone else, is always fun. My report, I'll go through this stuff quickly. I know we have a long agenda. The first thing is a beer garden in Brentwood Park. We've kind of talked about this, joking around. It's like, oh, this would be great if we could do this. And then Rockwell Beer Company contacted the city unsolicited and said, hey, we've heard about the park. We'd love to be in there. We met with them, and so they're interested. So if it's something that we are interested in doing, we could put together an RFP. I found the one for Francis Park, one that Clayton did. I'm trying to find another one from O'Fallon that they did one, so we could put together an RFP and go through that process, and really would be a long process, and we'd be looking at 25 before we did anything. But if that's something we can do, we can start working on that RFP.
So you're proposing this is actually in the park, not adjacent to the park?
Yeah, if the area,
The little hill mound?
Yep,
that you were-
exactly.
You were originally kind of thinking maybe it would be good for like a band
Yep.
stage or something?
so if you did, I still think you can do the band stage, and then off to the side, you could do their operations, and you could have some seating down there as well. That would be kind of the thought process. Still a very infancy stage. We'd have to look at everything. All
Yeah,
the-
I mean, from an amenity standpoint, I think it sounds cool, and it'd be interesting. That just would be an additional draw for our parking issues. So on one hand, I'm excited about the potential of it. On the other hand, I'm apprehensive to put yet another big draw amenity in the space when we've already got it kind of packed with a lot of things,
Sure.
If it were adjacent to the park, totally different story. But in the park, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Nancy.
So if this went for an RFP, before it would get approved, would it go through P and Z because or is it not really like, how does it work? Because if it went through P and Z, we'd have to deal with parking
Traffic.
and traffic.
So we'd
and-
have to do, depending on what we do, if we do something that we want more of a permanent structure that then we would lease out, then we'd be looking at building something first and then probably going through the RFP structure. If we want to work with someone to bring in something, the problem with that is then it depends on what they would bring in. If you saw, I attached what Rockwell proposed at the Cortex, which was a
Rail car? Or
container, yeah, a container, which is interesting. I mean, that's what their main location looks like, but it just depends on if that's the look of what we want to do. So there's a lot of different options, but all that would have to be studied and have to go through the process. We'd have to do design and look at all that. So again, we're willing to do it. We're probably months away from even getting an RFP out because we have to do all that other work first, but we want to make sure that it's something that we want to look into before we even start down that path.
Pounding this is the fact that some of the same uses is proposed for the redevelopment area. So I met with Joel this afternoon, and he reminds me that there's this entertainment area, and then there's that concept of a public market. So let's say that gets built, and then we also have this in the park. It could be competing interests. So I think we should think about all of that.
Yep.
But it wouldn't, starting the process, because it's going to take time.
That's
and
right.
getting, more of because it's an idea, an unsolicited proposal at this point. We might get totally different proposals when you do put the
true.
RFP out.
That's true.
I mean, it seems like there's no harm other than, staff taking the time to do it, to find the process, and there would be many, many other decision points along the way.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that, and it's always, hey, bring anything and everything to the table, and then we can always say no.
Right.
I think if we start putting out an RFP, then are we saying that's what we want, as opposed to, and sending the message that we're going to put something here, as opposed to unsolicited things that come to us that we're considering, you know. I think that's the, you know, the sort of fine thread we have to walk here on it, is once we put an RFP out, that shows an intent, an interest.
Because we don't have to act on it.
Right.
But now that, you know, we're getting a lot of free publicity and people are coming and wanting to partner, as a matter of fact, I have another one in here where we received someone that, I guess they sell cannabis-based drinks. So we're getting all kinds of interest. And so a discussion that I had with the mayor when I shared this with him is like, well, there needs to be within this RFP maybe standards for what the structure would look like. So we're starting to get ideas on what would be in the RFP. It's just an interest. The board does not have to execute on it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that knowing that there is some interest in doing some entertainment structure on that piece that does sit out of the floodplain, you know, I think that as long as that were the RFP, that we were interested in developing this into an extension of entertainment that may include a beer garden or something like that, then maybe that's how we thread the needle.
And Green Street was not opposed to it, actually. This individual that approached us initially talked to Joel and, you know, floating the idea. And he said, yeah, talk to the city. So I don't know.
Again, I can slowly work on this. I have a few other things on my plate right now that are going to take some precedence, but again, I think the idea was if this is something we wanted to kind of slowly do. I mean, I think the idea of the RFP is that we can say something that we're looking for a partner to possibly develop a entertainment area in this part of the park and give thoughts and things like that, and not say we are going to open a beer garden or something like that. I'm sure there's examples out there, and I can talk to the city attorney as well. Make sure we don't tie ourselves down if we put on an RFP. So I think the plan was that we wouldn't put it out until we brought it back here first. We would not advertise an RFP like this without bringing it back here, so then we could kind of dissect it a little bit more and see if there's things we like or want to change.
Well, I would certainly be supportive of you slowly working on that and bringing something back, so.
All right.
Anybody disagree with that potential motion there? All
Well,
good?
do we need a motion, or is that just direction to continue to, yeah, I mean, I'm not opposed to that. But I don't know that we have enough information yet to make a motion or decision.
Okay, all right.
All right, so second, some things we talked about with Brentwood Days that we said we're going to bring back. And so the two things we wanted to talk about today was hours of operations. If you remember last year, we compressed the event a little bit, trying to keep a crowd there. We did a very good job of that, so much so that we've made some changes to the rest of the event. And so the thought is maybe we go back, especially if we're doing wristbands for rides. That way that gives them a little bit more time. And then thinking about the line situation, especially for Brentwood residents, we thought maybe if we start a little bit earlier on Friday, that gives Brentwood kids a chance to get down there after school and maybe get on there before other people come. So it's almost like an after-school time. So we were thinking if we wanted like 3, 3:30, 4 o'clock to 10, and then go back to our normal Saturday that we had in the past.
Yeah, Nancy?
There was nothing better than showing up at 5 o'clock at Brentwood Days when my kids were little, and they would just go right after right. So 3 seems early to me because you're just getting out of school. But you know, you all are the experts. And then I wonder about the 10 o'clock. Is there concern about staying open later and the
That's our
crowd
normal-
size and the,
No, that's our normal Friday night time.
oh, is it
10,
10 on
yeah.
Fridays? Oh, okay, well then,
Yep.
okay, I just assumed it was 9, but okay, I've forgotten. And
And maybe split difference, like 4, just maybe an extra hour.
Yeah.
And then go back to Saturday hours. Does that sound good?
that's, yeah, that's, yeah.
Great. And then wristbands, we've looked around, we've talked to the carnival ride operator. They're gonna sell wristbands the day of. They're still working on the prices, but it's not gonna be much cheaper than what you see above. And so the concept of what do we wanna offer for Brentwood residents, that's gonna be a discount above that. And so we looked at kind of what you saw, Webster Groves is $30 per day, O'Fallon Freedom Fest, $35 a day, 40 per day. The St. Mary Magdalene, that's their Spring Fest, which I think is a new event. I couldn't find their summer, fall carnival, so I couldn't figure out how much they charge for wristbands, because that would be a good comparable. And then Suncrest, which is the 1 day, Crestwood and Sunset Hills, they do a combined carnival, and they do it $35 a day. So our thought process was 40 for both days, it's just a 40 for the weekend. That kind of gets you down, equate to 8 to 13 rides, and I think that's a pretty good deal. But again, we're open to doing, if we think, we want to go down to 35 or 30, that was just a number we kicked around.
Yeah, Jeff?
I mean, I think that's a good way to go about it. I mean, if you think about, then it equates to $20 a day if you go both days. Supportive of the $40 charge for both days, not just 1 day.
So can you clarify what you said? Is this $40 for residents? Is this $40?
No, this is for residents, so
This
we
is-
would pre-sell these at the rec center.
Okay.
And so you'd have to do that prior to the event. If you don't do it before that, well, before the Thursday before, you then have to buy something day of. So we'll push this out hard to make
And-
sure people come and get their wristbands beforehand.
Okay, and then did you say that the carnival ride operator is also offering wristbands? or
They're
gonna?
talking about it. We can
okay.
tell them not to if we want to. If we want to just keep a ticket thing, they said it's kind of up to us. It just depends on if you want to try to get something for non-residents. I could go either way. I'd like the idea of not having one, because then that gives the Brentwood residents a benefit. But it's just, if we wanted to do something for them, we could. Their discount is that 1 for 20, or 24 tickets for $20. That's kind of the day of discount.
What if a resident isn't able to come in before Brentwood Days and buy it, but then they show up and they'd like, I mean, are we going to be able to have anybody offering residents?
That's going to be very hard to
Very
do.
tough.
That's why we want to get this set today, so we can start pumping this out and say, hey, we'll probably do it June, July, August, September. I mean, that's 3.5 months to get people to come in and get their wristbands. I mean, I think that's a lot of time. So,
If they did sell wristbands day of, do we know how much those would be?
not yet. They're looking into it. I think if you look at, I think they do Suncrest, so I think that $35 a day is probably similar to what they would do, which would still be $15 more than what we do.
Are we expecting a lot of Brentwood residents to say, I don't want to go both days, I don't want to pay 40 for 1 day?
Possibly. I mean, we could do 20 per day. And then if you just, the only problem with that is then you have to make sure the days are different wristbands,
Right.
which we can do. Have a Friday band and a Saturday band.
I guess, I'm supportive of the breakdown of $20 per day, $40 total. I would say, I'd leave it up to your, whether or not offering 2 different wristbands per day is going to be complicating matters. I think before we make any decision, I would want you to make sure that that's what you want to do.
Okay.
Do we have to make that decision tonight?
Gives us more time to, I mean, if we bring it back next month, that's June. I mean, it'd still be 3 full months. We'd post it out, almost immediately after, and then we'd have plenty of time.
I just feel like we need to get this, we need to kick the tires on this and get it right and not rush into making a decision that then we want to come back on later, you know.
So can I ask just like, what is the wristband? Is it one of those peel things?
Yeah,
Then,
we'll have to look at that to see what's the best way to do it. Well, if we do 2 days, we'll have something that is different color, or even writing on there that says Friday, Saturday, we'll have to do something so
okay, you could write on,
that
okay,
operators know.
okay.
Or both. I mean, different colors is the easiest way to do it. That way they look, oh, you got blue today, great.
Because even if it's $40 for 2 days, if it's just the peel and stick things, those, you can't really shower or do anything with those on. Or if they have a soccer game in the morning and then they have
gotta
that,
take 'em
they
off,
have to take it
yeah.
off. So, I mean, maybe this 2-day thing might, if,
We can even do, I mean, we can say if we have to do one, we can say 20 for 1 day, 35 for both days.
With the, when residents come up and get these, what requirements do they have to show? Do they have to show an occupancy permit?
Yeah, I mean, that's typically what we do for posting. Well, we'll just do addresses, make them look at their driver's license. And we get a few people out in the time to have driver's license.
I just don't want it to be 200. I mean, occupancy permit, nobody can find theirs, you know.
And then the next question for you guys is, again, if you have someone as their nephew or their grandson or something like that who does not live with them, our thought was pay for this first year to see how it goes.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask, is how many, I mean, how many per household? I mean, obviously, I guess the occupants of the household, but, you know, if somebody has a grandparent coming in, you know, we'd want them to be able to have that as well.
So if you bring it back in a month, then we would vote on it here, but then it would go to the big board.
Would it need to go to the big board? I think there's something, I don't know that, but I just assumed it was going to be you guys.
I don't know, I feel like maybe this is worth voting at the Board of Aldermen, so everybody has a vote on it, just so it's, you know, people are gonna hear a lot about this.
we are going to hear a lot about
I mean,
this for sure.
I'm fine with, if that's, if we want to kick it out of the committee and up to the Board of Aldermen, I'll make that motion that, you know, direct staff to prepare a proposal along the recommendations and with the things that we discussed today to be presented to the Board of Aldermen for final approval.
And I'm sure we can get that for the next board meeting. That gives us a week. We can do that.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? All right.
Okay, so the wetland arboretum. Yeah, I've never been this close to the mic. So a couple things came up last night, so we quickly put some things in there. So just kind of last week, the contractor completed their first of 3 to 4 herbicide applications to kill the invasive plants. They'll be doing that pretty much all summer, and then they'll start with the planting and the seeding late fall, early winter for phase 1. And so, as we kind of talked about, this project was complicated with MSD Projects Clear. They're coming through the southern part of the site, and so because of that, we had to kind of split it up into 2 different phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So our contractor will be done with phase 1 before MSD's done, and so they'll come in on phase 2. They'll have to come back when MSD's done to do phase 2, and so that obviously increased our price, and we kind of talked about that a little bit. And so what we did was we asked the contractor to give us the cost for each one. And so DJM's cost was $27,215. So Bull and myself and Stacy really kind of talked to MSD, and they agreed to pay that full $27,000. And so that is going to be part of an agreement that we are bringing to the board, the next board meeting as well. In addition, there's always the easement they asked for, so we'll be bringing both of those items to the next board meeting. And then the parking lot. So the last thing kind of on the parking lot. Oh, I forgot one. The other thing is GRG is contributing $50,000. We've talked about that before. They're finishing up their memorandum of understanding. It's very similar to what we've gotten before for the trail and for everything else. They're going to have that approved at their meeting in June, and so our hope is to bring it for final approval to the June board meeting. So that's the last part of that. And then the parking lot, as we talk about everything else, we've kind of noticed that people are parking on the entrance going in and out and around the circle, the drop-off lane, and so we're just going to paint it, we'll yellow it, and stencil no parking. It will help the police be able to enforce that as well, so that's what we'd like to do.
When I drove by today, I noticed someone parked in front of the dumpsters, and so you might want to do some painting on the park,
I actually
on the
thought we'd
pad
already
there.
had, but,
We painted the fire hydrant right by the dumpster.
so.
Well, they
we'll look
were
at
like
yeah.
on, it was a big SUV, and it was just like.
Yeah,
there's-
we'll look at that area too, because that's another place.
Okay.
That's it.
The picture in the memo a rendering or an actual photograph?
It's a rendering with a really bad pen drawing that I did with my mouse, so. Yeah, that's the easiest way for me, because there's still, Google Maps still hasn't updated yet, so you still don't see the parking lot yet.
Can I ask a question on timing of that? When do you think you would be doing that? Because I want to make sure that, one, we have the other lots accessible.
Sure.
I mean, they shouldn't be parking there, and I get that, but, you know.
Now, we've ordered I think we're ready to place the order for the paint, and it would be in the next couple of weeks, so it'd
Okay,
be
so
probably in
our
timing.
lots will probably be
Yep.
open by then, and then, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Eric. Planning and development?
The Planning and Zoning Commission met last night, and regarding a for 1234 Hanley Industrial Court, continued the May 29th Site Plan Subcommittee. The Architectural Review Board is meeting next week for the new home at 9021 Pine, and then Board of Adjustment meeting is the week after for 2 variances. We do have also an application for the June meeting. So that will be coming through. Also in your information was the April monthly reports. We had 213 new permits this month and 771 inspections. That is a total of, from January to April, of 900 permits with 2,694 inspections. This is a 30% increase over last year's number of permits at this time. And in code enforcement, we had 24 new code enforcement cases and 39 inspections for the month of April, for a total of 151 code enforcement cases and 318 inspections. Now that low mow April is away, high grass and weeds or enforcement is picking up on that. So we will be having more inspections of those too. So.
All right, any questions for Whitty? Great. All right, thanks, Whitty. SUSCOM. Okay. All right, moving to consent agenda, all we have is the meeting minutes.
Second.
Comments, questions, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Business? Back to parking.
So again, I know we have a lot, so I'll try to make this quick so there's more time for discussion, but the basis of this is that at the board meeting, there's discussion about whether or not there should be reserved parking for the pavilions. And this is something that staff has kind of been looking at for a while. We've heard, we've gotten questions about it before. And as we've kicked around, as we've talked to other people, it's a no-win situation no matter what we do. If we reserve spaces, how many do we reserve? If you reserve one for each person that could be at a pavilion, well, you can have a 100-person, 120-person event, and then that's the entire parking lot. And then anyone who wants to use the park will be breaking down your doors. If we go the other way and we say, hey, we'll do 1 or 5 or something like that, then the renters will still not be happy because that's not enough. And then if we do it, how do we do it? Do we just put up a sign that says reserve, pavilion parking reserved for, and then maybe have a hang tag that says the hours? If we do that, we can't guarantee no one's going to be a jerk and just park there because like, it doesn't matter. Or even if we do staff it, if we say, hey, that spot's reserved for the pavilion parking, they can be like, oh yeah, we're here for that party, and just go right in, and then they still lose their spot. So we've kicked it around. We don't really have a great idea. I hate to say it. I've reached out to all the St. Louis directors. The one who've responded to me have all been like, no, we don't do anything like that. I talked to the director at Tower Grove Park. He's like, we have 32 pavilions and we don't guarantee parking for any one of them. Now Tiger Grove Park probably does have a little bit more parking because it's a bigger park and they have more roadways and it's all that parallel parking. But that is kind of what we're looking at. And so really, because it was brought up at the board meeting and they said they want something to be brought back to another board meeting, we're kind of here to ask what it is you think we should do.
All right, figure it out, team.
Well, I'll start, because I don't have an answer either. Certainly for the amount that people are paying to reserve the playground pavilion, I don't think we should be providing parking. If we're gonna provide parking, they ought to be paying a lot more money for that. So that's the first piece. And then, I mean, I don't know with the event pavilion, if there's a situation, maybe once the new parking lot's built, that you could pay an extra $500, I don't know what the number is, it's maybe too high, but, and then reserve that entire new parking lot. Like maybe you had a wedding, like I heard there's a wedding coming up. Maybe you had a wedding and you really didn't want people, they're all dressed up, and you would be willing to pay to reserve the new spots, and that would be fairly easy to, you know, cross off. And maybe they would, with the fee, would be staff to, you know, somehow let them in. So maybe that's a longer term solution.
And that is one we have thought of, and we didn't bring it up today mainly because that hasn't been approved quite yet. But yes, that is one that if we did something like that, we could then charge an additional fee for that lot and have someone staff there specifically for that. And that is, I think, the easiest answer long-term.
Long-term, yeah.
Doesn't help in the short term.
I mean, I agree with that, and we'll get there when we get there on that one. Until then, I do think the folks that are, and I agree with you with the playground rentals, that's just, you're going to a playground that's active at all times, so I don't think that we should be guaranteeing anybody spots. However, with the pavilion rentals, I mean, do we have a whole lot of those that are during the day? Or are those a lot of times more in the evenings and the playground should be shut down anyway?
Right now, it's half and half, to be completely honest. So we have some morning, some midday, and some evening. So it is kind of all over the place. And it's really not the morning ones because the lot, if you start at 8 a.m., the lot's usually okay. If you do a later one, a 6 to 10, that's not as bad because most people have left. It is that midday rental that is more of the issue. I mean, yeah, sorry.
So the question that I have is, you know, I mean, with that, obviously we can't eliminate, you know, handicap parking spaces or anything like that. But the ones that are just adjacent to the pavilion, seems to me that a small amount of those, if we could kind of get some stanchions or something that say this is reserved for an event, but I don't know if I wouldn't even guarantee that we would be staffing that to monitor it. I mean, to me, it would be if you will rope it off, but somebody in your event needs to be managing parking for your event, unless they want to pay additional for a staff member to do that. Seems to me to be a fair, reasonable way to do it. But again, that's I don't know if that's even doable. I mean, that.
With them having someone in their party man it is, what if they get into a confrontation? Then they don't have the authority to really be heavy-handed.
Right.
It's dangerous.
That's true.
But we have a staff member that's down there when the event pavilion is being rented.
We have a staff person there who is working right now, both the party pavilion and the playground and the pavilion. And ultimately, yes, they could go back and forth, and that's what they do right now. But if you're then talking about guaranteeing parking, that person would have to be would have to station themselves in the lot, and that would take them away from anything in the pavilion. I mean, we could have them sit there and then say, hey, if you need me, come grab me, and then someone will have to man this, while I'm gone, type situation, like, hey, sit here and make sure nothing happens while I go help you with this other issue. But then secondarily is, one of the things we talked about, if we do that, when do we block off the spaces? Because if it's a 1 o'clock event pavilion, we try to do it at noon, there's not gonna be 10 spaces to block off.
Right.
So then, do we have to then get staff there at 8 AM to block off these things and sit there all day to make sure no one parks? Again, it's not we've kicked this around a lot.
I mean, my thought is, I mean, it's just, I don't think you'd want a bunch of spaces, but you got to carry a bunch of stuff in for your event. And like, if there's no place to park there, then you're going to park illegally or whatever, just carry the coolers and the cakes and stuff in to the event building. And that kind of sucks.
I mean, the idea of what we have been doing is letting them temporarily park with flashers on in that drop-off circle to get their food into the pavilion or up to the playground and then move their vehicle.
Okay.
That's what we're doing now.
So a bit of a out-of-the-box idea. We have the food truck platform. Is there any thought of allowing at least a few cars to, like you said, I mean, to be able to come in and unload and, have any old folks that you might have at the party to be able to give them quick access to, I mean, could we allow, because if they're not in use, that's another pad that.
It is, and we could. I mean, what we do is what we do with food trucks. We would just walk the car up the path and make sure nothing happens.
Right.
We can't guarantee leaving, like we walk the food trucks out, they can't leave.
Right.
We can't force
Just
people.
let people come and go, right?
I mean,
It's
that's
an active path.
that's 3 spots. You might be able to get a 4th car, and I'd have to look at it again. But I'm not opposed to that. I mean, that's something our person who is working
I
there
kind
can
of see
do.
some danger
Yeah,
with
that's
that.
it's an active path. You're right. It's a bad idea, sorry. That's what the committee's for, right? We're kicking around
Nancy?
bad ideas.
Well, and I don't really have an idea, but I sort of have a concern that I'm sure you've kicked around, but like if people are expecting to have a spot reserved and then they don't,
Then you're playing.
then they're just gonna get mad at Brentwood and like, how's it,
Jesus, sorry.
how's
Yes.
it working now with people dropping stuff off? Are they, do they appreciate that their parking is a difficult situation, or are they angry that they don't have spots, or how's
I think I
the?
put on here, I want to make sure I get it right, is that we have refunded 5 rentals to people who they said, look, if you can't guarantee us anything, we want to go somewhere else. And we understand, we've given them the full refund for that. We have rented either the pavilion or the playground pavilion 27 times, and we've heard 1 complaint prior to, during, or after the event. So far, we haven't had that many issues. Doesn't mean they're not grumbling under their breaths and they're just not telling us. But I think that, one of the things we're going to be able to say is in 2 weeks is that there's 100 more spots right here. It doesn't help, again, for dropping things off, but we allow them, to drop off real quick. It's tough. Because again, anytime that you promise something, you don't deliver, you put that staff person, and we're talking part-time staff people that are very generous to give us their time in today's world. It's hard to find staff people in a way where we might then lose them. And so again, can't say this enough, we've kicked this around a lot, and we just don't have a great answer beyond the fact that we know there's parking across Russell as soon as the light's done and the temporary lots are done, and permanent parking once redevelopment is done. That, I think, solves a lot of these issues. But it's what do we do in the future? And if we do the permanent lot along the Crescent too, I mean, that helps. All that helps. It's just what do we do until then?
Well, I guess if anybody has a great idea, feel free to bring it forward. But it sounds like keep the status quo as it is right now. We'll just see how the new lots, as we normalize usage.
I appreciate that. However, I think that there might be an expectation that staff bring forward a policy on this. I think I heard that at the last board meeting. So I hear what you're saying, but not everybody's here, nor should they be. I mean, members of the board. but I think there's a strong expectation that there be a policy. So if we kick this down the line and people have events coming up in June and there's nothing, they're going to be upset people.
Well, I mean, you could, right, you
I
could
can
take,
talk to the people if you would like.
I mean, you
I would
could
like
take
that.
1 or 2 spots, right? You can make them permit parking only. And basically, when you come get when you pay for the pavilion, you get, a parking permit. And, I was at UMKC and they have like scratch off parking tickets and like, here's the month and here's the day. And like, that only works on that day, right? And you get 2 of them. The problem with that is like, those spots will sit empty until they come. And if somebody else is parked there, then you got to get them towed. And, I mean, there's a whole, there's ways of doing it, but it's suboptimal.
Like that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, when I was taking my son to university, there were parking spaces that they had, hey, future bulldog, future whatever, that they could change every day. And so, I mean, maybe there is something to that, where there's a couple of spaces that's reserved for, and then, I mean, you're gonna know the days that don't have an event. Obviously, maybe the sign is covered up, or
Oh, that's a good
or
idea.
something that allows people to park there. And then if you got an event scheduled for the day before the day starts, at the end of the day,
Cover it up.
open it up saying that this is reserved for an event. And
I could mock something up and bring it to the board
I
based
mean,
on
at least it'd be
that.
something that would provide a couple of spaces until we get all of the other lots online that will help. But I like that idea.
That's a great idea.
Okay, thank you.
I think it would be like 1 or 2 spots max.
A half space.
Do we need a formal motion or?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to do a mock-up and describe a system to reserve up to 2 spots for people who have events at the pavilion, and it would be a permit-type parking situation.
Second?
Okay. Any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right, True Grid.
Over on Mary Kay Court, we did install the True Grid. We put in the rock, put the grids down, snapped those together, and then covered it in dirt because we thought, well, we'll try to grow grass and make it look like it used to. But then we've had these rain events. People continue to drive off the concrete. It's just a rolled concrete gutter line, and they've rutted it up, but it's not as deep. They only go through the top 2 inches or so of dirt, but then they still track mud where we don't want them to. It's better, but it's not great. What I thought we would do is we'll rip them back out, put another layer of rock down, put the grids basically flush, and then just fill them with rock. And then that way, if you're gonna drive off, you drive onto like a pea gravel, or the grids themselves would be filled with rock. It may not be the greatest aesthetically, but it's gonna keep you from tracking mud. And I thought if it works well and they don't deflect and the rock stays in there, maybe then we'd encapsulate it in like the rubber weight material. That's pretty thin. And at least then the rubber would cover the whole thing, and then you wouldn't have any rocks that are errant and coming out. I don't think they will. If you compact them tight, I don't think the rock will come out.
I went down after the rain, and I meant to email you pictures, but it does look muddy, but it does look a lot better because the ruts aren't deep, right?
Right.
Because the True Grid is holding.
Yeah, it's
so it's really
supporting
just
the
the
load.
mud that's sitting on top of it. I mean, I think it's worth giving it a little more time, and let's see.
That was the other thing. I was like, well, we can rake it, put some more seed and straw down, see if it grows, and then if it kind of compacts, maybe then if they drive over, it'll just be a slight deflection. Right now, it's just pure topsoil.
Yeah, it's still loose soil. I mean, I think it's gonna evolve. So I would say
Right. Leave it.
I'm of the opinion, let's give it a couple months and see
Okay.
what it looks like in a couple months, and then maybe I think the gravel isn't gonna look that great. I think it's
I
gonna
don't
get
think it will
tracked all
either.
over the road.
Yeah.
I think it's not the greatest plains. I think this is gonna be okay if we give it a little bit of time. But I think the True Grid is doing exactly what we hoped, and that's supporting the weight You can see how many trucks drive over that thing, so. It's,
Yeah, I know they said they thought it was like an Amazon van or something based on the tire width.
Yeah.
but-
yeah, I think we just give it a couple more months and see, and then revisit.
All right, yeah, we'll go back out there then and reseed, straw it, and fill it in with any dirt. And-
What happens?
Yep,
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Okay.
And thanks for doing that.
yep.
All right, Van Mark Way, water.
Van Mark Way, I know the concern was that there's runoff that it's coming from Van Mark Way, since it's at a higher elevation where the apartments are. It runs down Van Mark Way, then it turns and goes south along Dorothy. But as it's what would it be, going east from Van Mark over to Dorothy, some of it goes down the trail and then pushes into those storm inlets that are along the trail system. I don't believe it's going as far as the tunnel itself, it's stopping short of there. Well, during a heavy rain event, I think anything's gonna get in that area. What I did look at though is, I know you had sent over some information about possibly doing grinding. I talked to staff. There's nothing that we have that's quite as surgical, so to speak, to grind it just a few millimeters. So if we did like the sidewalk planer, it's meant for concrete, it would probably leave gouges, we're thinking probably 1/2 inch or so deep. The milling machine is meant for asphalt, but the lowest setting on it's 1/2 inch. So if you tried to peel back Van Mark Way, you drop it down 1/2 inch, but then you're gonna have to put a layer across the top of it to bring it up a little bit, only because you're gonna have all that exposed rock. You know, you're not supposed to remove all the asphaltic coating, because then you've opened up the pores of the asphalt and you let the water in, and it's gonna create a big mess. It'll, have potholes sooner rather than later. What I did to kind of think outside the box, and it's simple, I just wanted to see if it would work, because it's pretty inexpensive. I just wanted to put in some sort of ramp that's removable. Like these are typically, they're a cable protector. So it's about 5 inches wide, it only rises up 1 inch, and it's flat on the edges. It's meant for like putting a cable in, electrical, something like that. So that you can run a wheelchair, you can run a bike, you can run anything over, it's just a light rise. But I thought, well, with that 1 inch lip, as the water's coming down, it could connect curb to curb, it would hit that, act as a berm, and then divert it over to Dorothy. If it doesn't work, it's just glued down, remove it, put it in the truck, forget it ever happened. But I thought that's, I think it was like $150, and they just snap together. But I thought, well, if you glue it down, you could create a perimeter of glue to create a bond underneath there so it doesn't seep underneath there. And if it rises, as long as the rain's not too intense, it should kind of float up against the edge and away. That's a thought. Unless you've got other ideas. I know, like I said, I looked at the grinding, I'm like, well, if we take too much away, we gotta put something back. What if we make it worse? What if we take too much away in one area and not enough in another, and create a bowl, and then I've got standing water, which it would flow through to a point, but then kind of create a cupping effect, and I don't know.
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think the frustrating thing for me is that, as I mentioned in my email, is that this is something that I've been able to kind of perceive that this is going to be an issue for some time. And it doesn't appear to me that when they came in and laid the asphalt, it was graded properly so that the water runs off into Dorothy. So, neither here nor there, maybe it's too late, we can't really hold anybody accountable, maybe they didn't design it to flow that way. What I was told back in 2021 by you is that TWM, once they get in and we get the grading, we look at the grading, that, we should be able to get the grading so that it runs past the path and onto Dorothy. That didn't happen. At some point, somebody came in, I think after it was originally put in, somebody put in new asphalt
MoDOT did that, yeah.
in between the walkway. Why was that done?
It didn't meet ADA. Whenever we took the slope measurements, the cross slope and transverse slope didn't meet ADA, so that's why you see the joints there. They saw cut out the area that didn't meet ADA because the trail goes through there, put in new hot mix, now it does meet ADA, but then you've got the flow issue.
Creates more of a problem. I mean, it created
It's
actually.
relatively flat there, that's why it sheets across, but it needs to be flat.
Well, but it hits, there's a lip then, to
Yeah.
what they put in, right where the curb meets the intersection of our path. Now there's a little bit of a bump, so any water that would have maybe bypassed the path now hits that bump and then comes up and it diverts it onto the path even more so. So I feel like, you know, there needs to be something redone, and that's why if we can't affect the crosswalk where the ADA compliance is, then maybe we need to saw cut a section of that exit higher up and create the swale so that it then moves that water toward the middle of the exit and actually has a chance for it to get to Dorothy. But right now, I mean, it's just continuing to go down the path. And in the picture that I sent today, there's a spot of now that used to be sod is now dirt that's just continuing to be eroded away on the eastern south side of the pathway where the other berm is. So, you know, that water's coming off and it's either going down the path or cutting straight to that corner and causing erosion. That's not going to go away. I mean, we can sit here and say, well, it's not going to be too bad. We'll clean up the tunnel every time we need it. Water's going where it's not supposed to, and it's causing a compounded problem, and it will continue to be a problem. So I think we have to figure out, I don't think we need to go to the extremes of having, you know, MSD come in and put an inlet right up there on Van Mark Way and have thousands of dollars to connect up to the sewers. You know, I don't think we need to have TWM necessarily spend thousands of dollars designing and engineering what should have been designed in the first place. The asphalt wasn't laid to where the water runs the direction it should. If I were paying a company to do my driveway and the water ran where it shouldn't go, then I would say, hey, you need to come out and redo this. But I don't know where we are with it.
I think what compounds this for us is this is public property. And so if we do it without engineering assistance, greater liability exposure for the city. But, you know,
But
you've
it should
been
have been
talking
engineered that way to begin with. So I have an issue if we have to pay the company that should have engineered it better to begin with, and they
Dan,
didn't.
is that what they're telling you? What is TWM telling you?
I mean, I can ask him again, but I know that, like, we can't really do grading on the trail. The only other thought I had was if a berm doesn't help, then you would take out a portion of the trail and put in something like rubberway that's porous. So as it sheet flows, it would go through the pores, and that would mitigate a big chunk of it from going south. You know, how much that is, I don't know. You'd have to measure it. But,
Presume that will work. There's no
Right.
guarantee.
You know,
but it's a simpler solution than an inlet and pipe.
when I just have a problem with putting a berm on the path and creating a bump. You know, when the city milled and overlaid the street where I live, the street came up higher than my driveway.
Mhm.
And in order to fix it, you guys put a bump in there, which was never really great, and it was a little crooked. It did allow water to flow off around my driveway or down the street and not come into my house. It wasn't until I fixed my driveway and brought it up to where it should have been,
Right.
to now it's a finally fixed, resolved issue, and it looks clean and nice. I just don't want to get into putting a bump on a new path that's supposed to be a nice, smooth transition when it should be just fix the road to allow the water to run off. You're an engineer. This is kind of, I don't want to engineer this thing to where we're putting little fixes on it when the problem is the slopes.
No, this is the non-engineer
Yeah.
person. But our neighbor put in a driveway, and I was slightly concerned that water was going to come into our yard. And so it was concrete, not asphalt, but there's the ever so slightest little, I don't know, about a foot in, and it just barely goes down, and the water just runs down their driveway. If you look at their driveway, it's totally looks flat. Like, you would know, you walk on it, it's flat, but it's just the tiniest bit down, and the water just runs down, and it doesn't run into my yard. And so it just seems like that's sort of what Alderman Gould's talking about, is if there was a slight different grading on that asphalt that goes down that hill, it would direct the water. It wouldn't, I don't know how you do that. It sounds like you can't do that without ripping the whole thing out, and we don't know if it's gonna work, so then here we are.
We talked about like maybe ripping it out if like a berm doesn't work and creating a ramp, like you see like the wheelchair ramps, it'd be more depressed, but then the backside would be your berm. It would be purposeful and smooth and bring it down at the proper slope, 12-1. So then you would still have that drop, but it would be a smooth transition. You would go further south and start your transition and come up to the asphalt. But then as the water would try to run, then it would be diverted again. And we thought, well, we'd cut a notch in the curb so that it would let it out by the inlet. You would just daylight it out there. That's something we thought we could do in-house.
In the swale idea that I had from starting at the high point on Van Mark Way and trying to push it more to the center, is there any sense of that, do you think? Because, is there any sense of adding material on the higher point and feathering it into the current highest point on Van Mark Way?
We did actually talk
to
about
at
that.
least
Yeah.
at least start to push that water out? Is there anything that we can do there to try?
There's like an emulsion we talked about this afternoon that it's like a slurry seal, kind of like you saw like Ladue used. It's just a few millimeters thick. And we thought, well, you could apply it in a couple layers and that would change that angle so that as it's coming, it would then keep it pushed over more towards Van Mark instead of down the trail. But we would just build it up in layers, almost like building paper mache. It's like put a layer on, first take a measurement of what your baseline is, and we've got a level and a rod. We can shoot an elevation, add it, let it dry, take another elevation, see if you've moved the needle, We thought, well, like.
That's the way that I thought about, without having to completely rip the whole thing out and redo it, is trying to higher up before it even gets to the path, higher up on the west side of Van Mark Way where the other part comes around, is try to build that up enough to create a ramp to push it toward the center. If you can get enough water at least flowing toward the center, I think we have maybe a chance of keeping it from getting on the path, but without drastically, and I would be in favor of at least trying something, trying some simple things first. I don't like the idea of putting a bump on the trail. So if you, I guess I would, I'd make a motion to direct you or your staff to look into adding material and or milling a little bit in the center to create enough, a little bit of a fall from the highest point on Van Mark Way to the middle as much as you can.
I think we try that, and if it doesn't, then we'll try something else.
So the part that we would mill is it city property?
We own between Mary and Dorothy.
So we don't need anybody's permission to do it?
We shouldn't.
Okay.
I looked at the right-of-way drawings before this, so it's like, if the right-of-way drawings are accurate, then the answer is it would just be solely us.
Have our
Yeah.
direction.
Yeah, again, if we take too much off and make it worse, there's that. Because you're using a machine that's grinding material. It's not like, a surgeon's
Well, I would start with how much can you build up on the one
Right, I would go
side
with
to
that
push
approach
it that way?
first.
And if that
Yeah.
doesn't work, then maybe it's do we need to grind a quarter of an inch off in the
Right.
middle so that it creates enough of a fall?
The
I know
slurry
it's
was the
not
best
surgical.
idea that we thought, because if you overdo it, you can always peel it back.
Right.
Same thing like the little rubber, berm. It's like, well, if you put it down and it works, then you're done. If it doesn't work, just peel it back up. You could use a two-way tape if you didn't want to use like an actual epoxy.
Well, I say assuming we approve this, let's try this, and then we'll try again if it doesn't work. How's that sound? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. All right, we're going to temporary parking lot.
We were asked to take a look at the lot at 8318 Manchester. We're at 8330 Parks and Public Works, so 8318 is the empty lot just to the east of us. So the city owns that lot. We park on it already. We have vendors, whenever the salt comes in, it goes that avenue as well. The band stage is parked in this lot, but basically I just took some measurements and then sketched up like how many stalls I think you can probably fit in there. And it looks like roughly 24 stalls. Since there's mostly rock already there, it would probably only take maybe another 3 inches of rock on top of the rock that's there. And it's something we could actually do in-house because we don't need special equipment to move the rock around. We could use backhoe skid steer. The only thing we would need to rent would be like a big roller like you see over at the north side, over by the tunnel. Just the rock and the roller, we're looking at $10,000–11,000. And that included the parking stops too, the plastic or rubber stops that you would put to delineate those 24 stalls. And each stall would be 9 feet by 18 feet, which is standard, and it would leave an aisle of about 23 feet between those. So it'd be 90-degree parking. That's if we need it. I know we're getting basically 100 at the tunnel, plus the 64 that's already there at the permanent lot. This is something to keep in your back pocket unless you wanted to try to do it sooner rather than later, but it might be that we just wait for the others to get online.
How do you think people would walk into the park? Would they take the dirt path down onto the path on the Sycamore, or like back out to Manchester and over, you think?
I would just stay on that south side of Manchester. Like I walked it and it's, for me it was like 7.5, 8 minutes. But, if you're unloading kids and grabbing stuff, maybe it's 10 or 15. It's just a decent walk.
So you went up to the sidewalk and over?
I just stayed on the sidewalk, stayed on the south side, walked past Fastenal.
You didn't
what used
walk
to be Fastenal,
straight south
and
out
then
of the
walk
parking
down
lot?
that trail that's to the east side of the
Right.
tunnel and
Okay.
down it.
Yeah, Nancy.
Yeah, I'm not overly in favor of doing this now. It's not that many spots. I parked there for the eclipse and walked and walked back to the event lawn space, and it was a long walk. And if you had little kids, I just don't think you'd park here. And I think we need to see how these other lots are doing before we talk about spending money and staff time to do this.
All right, sounds good. All right, moving to new business. Article 14 of the,
No,
We got
you got
permanent
E.
parking on Brazil.
oh,
All right. I know we're running out of time, so I'm going to try to make these quicker. So we talked about additional permanent parking along that crescent on Brazil. What we did is we asked Jacobs just to say, since they did all that work over there to begin with, hey, what could you sketch out? What do you think? Is it worthwhile to maybe look at if we want to look at it? And they had a sketch of about 30 spots. Obviously, that is just a quick sketch. That was not something that they overly designed. If we wanted to look at a permanent parking lot, which I think is a decent idea, we can move forward with them. They're still under contract, so it'd just be a modification or a change order to their contract. And then we could see what that comes out with. I could obviously talk to them about Alderman Gould's recommendation today, so that could be part of the process as well, and get answers on that. I did get their stuff back today. They said a task order would be not to exceed about $40,000, $41,000. And then the back of napkin, 0.35 acre parking lot would be about $350,000. So again, we don't know exactly until we do the design. A lot of that depends on if we do, what type of material we do as well. So I think they're looking at pavers because they thought we'd want to make it consistent. So that would be, those are the things we'd have to look at in the design. So we're asking if you want to move forward with Jacob's task order to at least start the design.
I will, y'all looking at me, so I guess I'll
Well,
talk.
no, I just looked back. I'm like, I didn't see the numbers. I guess you added that today, and I'm
I
like
just,
trying to
I
take
just,
it in.
yeah, I just got that right before the meeting.
Wow.
It's a lot of, yeah, it's expensive. I think it's evident that we're going to need more parking at that location. Even when Russell's online and the temporary lots are online, while those are not as far as Public Works, I think they are probably further than some people would like to have if they're going to the playground or something like that. So, and I think that land itself is, I think it's really nicely landscaped, but beyond the landscaping, it's just grass. So, if it can be utilized better as additional overflow parking, while being respectful of the landscaping that's been installed, that would be my preference. I'm not opposed to going forward with the design, getting the designs with respect to being respectful of what's already been installed. I think ripping all of that out is just, it's wasteful and not very sustainable of us. And I think, it probably should match the surface that we have already from a design standpoint. So, I mean, I think that we need to at least go forward with getting a design done so that we know what it's going to look like and how much it's going to cost us. So I would make the motion that we contract with Jacobs to do the design not to exceed $40,858.
Second.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in favor of two. I'm concerned about the $350,000.
I am too.
mean, it's like $15,000 a spot that we would be
It's
paying.
crazy.
But I think it's worth getting the plan, and it's going to take a year. I mean, I don't know, maybe things change, but I think it's worth getting the design. But I think that's going to be a hard question if we go forward with it. But okay,
Agreed.
any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Good. All right. Article 14.
So we looked at, we talked about it a couple Public Works Committee meetings ago, and the idea of really wanting to have a regulation for no smoking in the parks. And as we talked about it, we realized we probably need to do something with marijuana now that that's been approved. And so we looked at two spots. We looked at Article 14 of Chapter 215, which is the Clean Air Act Smoking Prohibited section of the code, and then also looked at Chapter 225, which is the Parks and Recreation Department. So in Article 14, I just looked at some few other things, added a couple things into there, but really the basis of that was to kind of beef up the section, add section 215.1841, which really talks about prohibition of smoking on city properties, and really hits primarily the park areas. And then also section 215.1845, which is the restrictions of marijuana and then marijuana-infused products. It's very similar to all the other municipalities are doing the same sort of ordinances around. In fact, I basically case studied it, copy and stole everything, and put it into our code.
Yeah, Nancy.
I'll make a motion that we send the changes to Chapter 15, Article 14, and is it all in Article 14? And also Chapter 15? Chapter 225? 215 and 225, and forward the changes to the Board of Aldermen.
I'll second that. That doesn't include the next one.
No, that's
a separate amendment. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other comments? All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Great. All right. Chapter 225.
So another change to Chapter 225 comes from the recommendation of the police department. They've said that it's hard to enforce certain things at big special events like Brentwood Days. A bag check, no weapons, things like that, because we don't have anything specific in our code. They recommended doing something of a festival or a special event type ordinance. And so again, we looked at a few that are around. The city, this was actually mimicked after the city of Fallon, who has a really nice one for their big special events. So that's kind of what we took it from. And that's what we did.
Yeah, Nancy.
I have a question, and now I don't see it, but there was this is where there was something about low-speed vehicles
Yes.
and not allowing them. So I guess my question is, not for Brentwood Days, but for something at the new park. Do we allow, I should know, but do we allow low-speed vehicles to go through the tunnel?
We do not.
Okay, so never mind.
PRG doesn't allow it.
Never mind.
And that was
Okay.
just another reason to add that to
To
kind
add
of
that in
beef
there.
that up
Great.
too.
Never mind. I answered my question.
A couple of things that I had a question about. One is the item 4 on here, it's unlawful for any persons to bring glass containers or coolers into the event or festival. I wanted to get your sense on coolers, because that's something that I think this community does like to sort of bring their own coolers. I'm looking at Alderman Weggie here. You know, to like Brentwood Days for the fireworks, for example, and some of the other events that we have, like the music in the park and all of that.
Yeah,
What's
that
the
is
reasoning behind coolers?
twofold reason, and it could be a third if I remember the third one. The first and foremost is, again, it's the police department says it's harder to, when you're doing bad checks already, it's easier to sneak things into coolers if you're not paying attention, then you'd really have to go through the cooler. It's for them, that security issue. Secondarily, what we have seen, especially in our events and talking to other people, that most events and special events are going away from doing this, because as you bring in things like food trucks, as you bring in people who are trying to sell food, even at Brentwood Days, what happens is they lose business. And so we were not going to have food trucks at the summer concert series this year, because all the ones we've brought in the past, like, we don't make enough money because you guys allow people to come in with their drinks and their food. And we begged and pled to get a few this year with the understanding, like, look, this park we're exploding. You've seen this stuff on social media, and like, all right, we'll give you one last year, or we'll give you this year and see. And so those are the main reasons why.
In the second, we can have some, I guess, I'd like to hear how the board feels about that, but then, the other one is the pets. There are, now I understand Brentwood Days, maybe we wouldn't want a bunch of people bringing their pets around, but, at some of the events that we've had recently, there's been people that bring their pets on a leash, and it's been very nice, I walked through the park, and I know it wasn't a special event, but walked through the park and decided to go up around through the playground with my dog, and the kids were excited to see a dog, and they didn't even come up, but they were just pointing, oh, dog, I think if we just completely prohibit pets from any events, that, I don't know, that it's part of our culture and community.
I will tell you, this, again, was another big one from the police department, and I think their focus primarily is Brentwood Days on this one, because they've said that they have had issues continuously about pets jumping up, biting, and doing things like that. And we looked around, and it's very typical to not allow pets into those big things. Now, I think I would agree with you that we could probably reword this and say, maybe we only say for Brentwood Days, and just, that would be the only one. But again, that's the reason why that came specifically from the public safety.
Yeah, I mean, I think most of these are definitely Brentwood Days specific in my mind. Some of the other events, I think we should be a little bit more relaxed.
Yeah, and I think the idea, and I hate to say this, is that you build to the most restriction, because that way you have it in place and you can go.
Then it's enforcement.
Right, and then it's enforcement as far as, do we really do back checks everyone? We won't do back checks on Brentwood Days. We won't do it for summer concert series and things like that. But it gives the police department the authority to do so when we want to do it.
Well, I mean, I think that that hits at the heart of the matter. This is really for Brentwood Days. It's not for music on the menu, and even if we're not going to be enforcing them, then let's get the code right, if that's really why we're doing it.
I do think, yes and no. I mean, we do want to say things like not allow people to bring tents to the summer concert series, and we haven't had that a whole lot, but we want to be able to do that. The cooler thing is a big one. If we want to have food trucks at these events, that is going to be something we need to be able to enforce. But again, we can go two different routes. We could do this specifically for Brentwood Days and just say this is for Brentwood Days, or I don't know how we tag it to say something bigger, like a larger special event. And then, in our regular rules, we're looking at those right now too, because we're going to do this. We have to change signage. We're going through all our rules right now anyway. So we could bring some of these other rules that we think are important back during that process.
Yeah, I would be in favor of something like that. And then, like Nancy's question about low-speed vehicles, you can't write it into the event, but you can write it into the parking lot, right?
Technically, yes. Yeah.
Right, because you could come across Russell.
You come across Russell.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get there.
Right. So I think my original question was, could you get to the parking, like, are they so prohibited that you couldn't get there? Or you could get to Brentwood Days, you could come across,
Yeah, you can get to it.
like
They're
the
just not-
parade route and
They're
come
just not
across
allowed on the grounds.
on the
technically.
grounds. So,
And same thing with like bicycles. I mean, we're on Great Rivers Greenway. We're not going to allow bicycles during events.
Again, that's, I think, for the ground, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we can go something, and I'll play around with it. I think this one should be specifically for Brentwood Days. And we could start with Brentwood Days, and then we can always change it to add different events, but, I don't think we're ever gonna have an event like Brentwood Days right now.
Right.
In the future. I mean, all the other events, even Wine Whiskey Walk, I would say would be a smaller, and we'll handle those with our changes in our other rules.
so is this timely? Does this need to go to the board in May or?
No,
could-
much like anything else, we want to make sure that we advertise it well ahead of time so people know. That's why we're bringing it now, so if there is more discussion, it's gonna have 2 readings at the board, most likely. I mean, we don't have to do 2 readings, but typically ordinances get 2 readings, and then you're looking already at May, June, if we go June, July. We still have 2 months to kind of put it out there. We're just trying to give Michelle a chance to get this out to people.
Well, I was going to punt
Thanks,
it, but
Michelle.
if you would rather have direction, I was going to punt it a month so that you had more time to bring it back
We-
here in a
we-
final
I think we
version.
can do that as long as you guys are
Or-
okay with doing 2 readings in one board meeting. I typically try to do the 2 for code and ordinance changes, because that's what we've been directed to do, but if we can do 1,
Or,
I can do
mean, we
this.
could give direction, I think. Would you
Because that would
rather-
give us the month, we're close to finishing our rules, so we can bring back the rules and this. It'd be all together in one chapter 225 and have that ready to go for you guys.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I
You want to give direction?
I could give, if you're on a quicker timeline, I could give you.
I think-
If you have direction, why don't you give it?
So, I will make a motion to direct staff to make revisions to section 225050 and target most of the restrictions to Brentwood Days.
Second? Okay. Any other comments, discussion? All right, all in favor? Aye?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great.
We'll have it ready next month?
All right, stormwater.
No, well, I was thinking that would be enough to take it to the full board.
It is.
Okay, sorry. Okay, yeah.
Stormwater, we just wanted to bring up the fact it's been a couple of years since we have pushed out the questionnaire. We did the questionnaire, Gonzalez collected the results from the folks, did the investigation, did the ranking system for the stormwater master plan. I had a gentleman come in at 2321 Hilton. He said he had water issues. I think it's more related to MSD since he's got storm and sanitary behind the home and it's older. But that brings to the front, there's other people out there that maybe don't know to contact us to then investigate and put together another list. So we have the questionnaire. We wanted to see if you wanted to put that out there and run the.
Yep.
Okay, so we haven't done any of the
Anything yet.
projects. We haven't done anything yet.
Right.
So
We're closer
until
that
we
we-
do
yeah.
some of those, like, I'm not in favor of getting more people on the list. We haven't done anything. We don't know what's happening with OMCI. We don't know how much money we're gonna have. I mean, this is not even in any of our lifetimes that this stuff's gonna get accomplished. So, until we start doing some of these and showing the citizens that, look, you reported your problem to us and we solved a few, I'm not in favor of doing more of
So
these.
what do we do when we hear from people like the person you heard from this week, last week, that have an issue? I guess, Dan, you were able to do some sort of preliminary analysis
I
and
did.
determine it was just, it should be privately funded.
I want them to look at this first.
Well, that's great. I mean, I think that's good, but I just,
So is the survey still active at all
Yeah.
out there? All right, so I'm trying to get an understanding of what you're asking for is allowing a place on the website for the survey to be ever-present, evergreen, for people to be able to fill it out. We'll collect that data, but I agree, I don't think we need to spend the money to go to Gonzales until
reprioritize.
we kind of know where we stand with the current projects, and really until we get enough of them that we feel like, okay, there's 15 more sites that are not on our plan. You know, we had one in Ward 3 that reached out to us that was actually part of an existing site. So we were able to send that person to, okay, here's the stormwater master plan, here's the problem that was identified, here was the potential solution. It didn't satisfy the problem they have, but at least it let them know, hey, you know, your area is already identified as a problem. I think we're gonna have fewer of those that are brand-new ones. I think we need a way for people to be able to communicate that they have an issue, and for staff to be able to try to run it up the flagpole internally to see, is there an MSD problem? Is there really an issue that, one, is not a private issue? You know, I mean, we're only gonna be able to fund things that are public and combo type of things. So when people come to us that are really contained within their own private property, it's kind of hard to say we're going to be able to spend public money on that.
Well, I mean, I think we wanted to keep it evergreen. We wanted to continue. I don't understand why we haven't completed any projects, but that's a different discussion. But I also think there's value in knowing where the issues are in case, you know,
Right.
if there's something going on in that area, maybe there's a way we can fix it, you know, so we know, at least we have understanding. I think there's some value.
Gonzales is expensive, so I don't want to like initiate them until we have a collective, you know, critical mass of, hey, these are, like I said, 15 new spots that we didn't identify before. Let's have that evaluated.
We could look at the list and maybe when we're tip over the 50% marker, like right now, that bid package one, there's 6 projects, and I think there's like a total of 42. So maybe when you get to like 21 completed, then you push this out there, you know, for another group. I don't know.
When will that be?
I don't, yeah, well, I
I thought
mean,
that went out. I thought that
20
went out.
years.
That's
I mean,
not,
we've been stacking up OMCI money for like 8 years on this thing. I mean, like,
yeah,
Not going to go far.
yeah. It won't, because the new estimate's 226,800, so that like depletes a couple of years of OMCI funds, which is good because, you know, you can't keep it for perpetuity. You do eventually need to spend it. So we can just table it and
I
visit
think
it.
it's worth publicizing it and saying we need to add, you know, new issues. I think we should continue to understand them, at least know where they are.
Just make sure people know we're not following up on any of it. It was just collecting data.
yeah, it's data collection. I mean, I think the frustration people had with the last one is that they got studied and then they thought was going to get fixed. And then they realized that they live in a neighborhood that the city's not going to help. And so we spent all this money to study things that we're not going to ever fix. And so there was this sort of false hope that their water issues were going to be solved. So, I mean, I think if there is a collection data point, and there might be, like I think you have both said, And maybe at a certain point, Gonzalez studies them, but like, we can study things to death, but unless we act, it's not worth studying.
Yeah.
Verified, yep, that's a problem.
You know,
Put it in the
an
report.
engineer said it's
Put
a
it in the
problem,
report,
and you
put it
already
on the
knew it
shelf.
was the homeowner. It was.
So what do we want to do? I mean, are we, because I think I hear what you're saying is to activate the survey out there to collect more data, but then what?
Yeah, I don't.
I don't want to spend more OMCI money paying Gonzalez to study more things when we haven't even fixed anything.
I agree with that.
I think we rely on report of concern that exists constantly, you know, and then, and so if we hear of people or if they call, they can go through that channel and at least get it on staff's radar, but,
So, you know, the it's a combination of things so that the city's aware of it, and then maybe residents also send it to MSD. And as Dan has time, and Dan is just that good, he can review some of them, and have some sort of preliminary analysis of it. And if it's more than that, then just communicate that this
We
is,
can keep a running list like we did
this is
with
as much
the
as we can do
sump
right now.
issues.
City's not committing to funding anything, but we're
Right.
gonna share it with MSD, so when they have funds, they can address the issue,
Right.
maybe before the city.
but do you need the survey in order to direct that?
Because we already have the survey instrument, we could just continue to use that and maybe make some modifications to it so that it doesn't commit Gonzalez to anything.
Right.
I guess
People
I'm
aren't
confused.
using MyGov for this.
They're not using
No,
report
they're
of
not.
concern.
Or report of concern, right?
Well, I guess,
I
like,
got it.
if we're gonna we surveyed people about a parks master plan, because we're doing about parks, and we're doing a parks master plan. So there's something's gonna happen with their information. So, we surveyed people a few years ago when homes turn over, but like, I just don't see sending a survey out when we know we're not gonna do anything with the information. I think we should continue to gather and keep a list of problems that come up, but I mean, I guess I disagree with Alderman Weggie that unless we're going to do something with the information, why gather it?
It's good to know. And ultimately, I don't know any city that has funds immediately to address any of these issues. And so if we identify that this is a private solution, at least we can provide that to those individuals and they could pursue how they fund it, rather than, oh, I don't know the first thing to do to solve this problem. That's the benefit that the city would provide them. I'm not saying to use all our money to pay Gonzalez to do it, but I think there are some that maybe Dan can help with, and the ones that are more involved, then we just refer it back to the resident. You would need to engage an engineer for a solution. Or we do nothing.
I mean, if everybody else wants to do that, I'm fine. I just think it provides false hope.
It's difficult, right? I mean, I think knowing now how this was going to go, I wouldn't have been in favor of even wasting the time on this thing because it's just falling completely flat on its face. So we've done nothing but talk and pay. So
I would say, I mean, I don't know what you're describing, Bola. Do you need any direction? Do you need a motion on?
But we
on
don't
that?
want to do something that the committee does not support.
I don't real, I'm leaning to Alderwoman Tice's, perspective on it as well. So I'm inclined to sort of table this and bring it up maybe down the road when we have more concern, or at least until we've at least accomplished a few of
Something.
these projects.
will we be getting a bid back on those first package of 6 at some point?
Right now, they're at MSD getting evaluated for permits, and then as soon as they finalize and say that the permit's approved, then we can do the bid advertisement. concurrently, they gave me the forms today. I'm going to fill out for OMCI funds for those 6 projects so that then we can reimburse ourselves. We'll do them, get construction bids, and pay ourselves back.
So we're on the cusp of doing something.
Yes. Yeah, we'll be doing something in 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think Alderman Gould made a motion to table it.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Street RFP.
Yeah, we advertised the RFP for McKnight. This is from Litzinger to the York, just south of I-64. Initially, we looked at like a resurfacing, like a sealant, like Ladue did, but we wanted to see how much mill and overlay was because it's more durable. So we actually got some good numbers back. We got 3 bids, and of those 3, Gershenson was the lowest and best contractor. So just to do the mill and overlay from McKnight to Litzinger, on McKnight from Litzinger to York, it's about $130,240. We have a budget of $140,000. So we also wanted to look at that quadrant of Litzinger on that northeast corner because that's ours at that intersection. To do that, it's another $14,041, so you're at roughly $145,000. We can easily fit that in. I can come up with the other $5,000. And then just because we wanted to be nice on that southeast corner, that belongs to Rock Hill, and we thought it would look better aesthetically if you could do that whole side, that eastern half of McKnight, there at Litzinger. They're looking at if they have the funds, and then if they have the funds, they would piggyback on our contract. So definitely want to do items 1 and 2, which is solely in our property. And then if we can work with Rock Hill, then we'd add, but you're looking at roughly $161,246 if it's all 3, but then you'd get back your $16,525.
Yeah, Nancy.
I have one question, and then I'll make a motion. So the unsuitable subgrade is significantly more expensive in the Gershenson
It is.
bid. Are you concerned about unsuitable?
I don't think so, because you'd see it failing. That'd be like you do your mill and overlay and it's really soft, and then you've got to dig down even deeper and then add rock, and then it's a thicker cross section of, yeah. We've had that, but usually it's few and far between. Every now and again we do, but
Okay.
fingers crossed we don't have it on here. But it would take a lot to make that delta, that 14,000, but on item 1 between the number 1 and number 2 bidders, the way we see it.
Right. Okay, well then I would like to make a motion to approve using Gershenson for the mill and overlay of McKnight from Litzinger to York, as well as the westbound section of the intersection at Litzinger. Well, and including Rock Hill if they, I guess they have to approve theirs, but including Rock
Yeah,
Hill.
I told them I
is-
need to know before the 20th, and if not, then they would maybe do a change order, through us, but then still reimburse us.
And then we would pay for the Rock Hill and get reimbursed
Correct.
if their board approves it.
Second that.
All right. Any other comments or questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Emergency on-call general construction services.
This one's fairly easy. We advertised this particular RFP. We only got 1 proposal back, and that was on May 8th, and that was from Castle. So what this allows you to do is if you ever have an emergency in case you needed to do like removing sediment, if you had to install riprap, if there's a culvert that fails, so on and so forth, stream bank stabilization, this would be like anywhere that Brentwood bound maybe had like an issue. You don't have to go through the whole process of, trying to define a scope. This would be more, it's an emergency. We already know your rates for equipment and labor, figure it out. How many hours do you think it's going to be? And then we'll tabulate it based on what we already know.
Yeah, it's unfortunate we didn't get more bids, but
Right. I didn't think you'd want to advertise again. I thought, well, we only got 1, and it was sent to several different people, and it was in the county. And
Are you concerned that we only got 1 or knowing that we've had other companies bid on projects like this before, confident that Castle's, competitive no matter what?
from the working relationship we've had and the, quality of the work, it's like, I feel that this is a good proposal. I was hoping to have at least 2 or 3 in our stable so that you could, if one's busy, you'd call the other and so on and so forth, but it didn't work out that way. This is for a 3-year contract like our typical, and then 2 1-year extensions. We could always open it up again in a few years. And
We also heard that a lot of the contractors are busy when we were looking for others to do the parking lot, so that might have played a factor in it, but Castle does good work.
Does this have to go to the full board, or is it?
It would.
it was,
yes.
yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I'll make a recommendation to move forward with the recommendation of Public Works Director to have Castle as a on-call construction services and forward to the full board for discussion and approval.
Second.
All right, any other comments, questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great. All right, citizen comment? Anyone online? All right, seeing no new business, meeting is adjourned.